Fantastic. Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. Tribes Unite presents 10 and 11 on Christmas Day, 25th of December 2026. Welcome to 10 and 11 meeting of Cocaine Anonymous on Tribes Unite Christmas Day. Step 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. It is now with great pleasure that I introduce our first speaker, that is Matt T, who is going to share on step 10 for 20 minutes. Matt T, I have no idea where you are, my friend.
I'm here. My name is Matt. I'm a recovered alcoholic and addict. Thank you for the honor and privilege to show up. Donna, thank you for asking me to speak. Since we've met, this has kind of become a thing. And I promise you that there's a very short list of people that I would have spoken on Christmas morning for. But when Donna asks, I come running. So it is beyond me what's going to come out of my mouth. I haven't the slightest idea. What I pray is I say that God to quiet my mind and open my heart. And lately I've been really, really emotional, and I've been really in this place of where my prayer and my talking to God feels as though there is an actual physical connection between me and spirit, if that makes any kind of sense whatsoever. And it has taken me about the last 4 or 5 months of struggling with the idea, not intentionally, but upon review, that my prayers need to be transactional. And that when I speak to God, and that when I commune with God, and when I spend time with God, that there needs to be some sort of feedback received all the time, and some sort of and so to have grown into this place where I've settled into a much deeper relationship with God feels phenomenal. But it also has meant that this big old muscular fireman has spent a lot of time in the last couple of weeks in tears, and not bad tears, good tears, grateful tears. I was sending a text message just 10 minutes ago, and the dripping water all over my phone just because of what I was sharing with somebody that came directly from the heart. And so here we are. My sobriety date is May 19, 2016. Hey, Ralph. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor. Our sponsor guys are some of those guys' sponsor guys. And my home group is the world famous Bronx Big Book Study. If you haven't had the chance to check us out, I know for you guys across the pond, it's really late at night. But if you're up and you can't sleep, come hang out with us, because we go through the big book and it's fun. And so it is my understanding that I am tasked with speaking on step 10. And this is it, right? Like when I get to step 10, I have arrived at probably the most powerful tool I'm going to have to see whether or not I mean what I say. Do I really want to be sober? Do I really want to show up for life? Right? Like when I got here and after, right, I came to terms with the truth about my alcoholism and my addiction, and realized that like alcohol and drugs weren't really the problem at all. Right. And it opens up this field for this idea of well, then what really is the problem? And it's this attempt at this attempt at managing a life that I'm not qualified to manage. It's this absence of a relationship with God. And if I don't have a relationship with God, there's no way I'm going to have an authentic relationship with myself. And I'm damn sure not going to be able to have any kind of relationship with you. And so when I'm here and I'm sitting and I'm doing inventory with my sponsor, and not even necessarily like these formal four and fifth, just sitting there and talking about like from the heart where I'm like, I'm tired of disappointing people. I'm tired of hurting people. I'm tired of falling short. I'm tired of of just not reaching the standard of man that I know God has set for me. And right. And like, I joke all the time that when we get to 6 and 7, I love to listen to people in meetings talk about I'm working on my character defects. Right. And I'm always teasing people about that. And I'm like, how do you do that? Do you spend the rest of your life playing character defect whack-a-mole? Right. And it's like, because I don't work on my character defects, I've become willing to have God remove my character defects. And I've found in my experience, and maybe this has been yours, but it has definitely been mine, is that what that looks like in real time is that I become painfully aware of the character defects. Right. And that's the extent of it, is that I become painfully aware. And then I'm offered, immediately I'm offered a fork in the road. Right. And so if I've asked God to take these things away and then God presents it to me in IMAX, right? And like in Dolby Digital 3D. And it's like, this is who you are, right? My friend Chris, who we did a journey through the steps together, he says, Matt, like the place you want to get is you want to get to the place where you can see the character defect walking in the room. Right. And so if God is presenting these things to me in absolute plain sight, it's like, okay, then what is the next action for me? Because I don't have any real power here, right? I didn't have any power over whether or not I was going to pick up the drink or whether or not I was going to pick up the drugs, right? Like, so what makes me think that I'm going to have the ability to make a decision to be less resentful or to be less fearful or to be less lustful or to be, less, more honest or whatever, insert character defect here, insert shortcoming here. And I don't. But when it's presented to me with a moment of space, I can decide whether or not I want to be that guy in that split second of a moment. And in the beginning for me, that looked like, hey man, you gave me an extra $1. Here's your $1 back. Right. And I remember I used to very often, I would just tell stories. Right. Like I would just make up stories. I would embellish stories. One of the ones that I used to tell at the bar all the time was me like shark diving in South Africa. At the time, I didn't even have a passport. Right. Like I was just full of it. And I remember like somebody coming up with something that would trigger me to then tell that story. And then like me stopping in the middle of it and being like, hey guys, like that story is complete BS. Right. And like that moment where my fear of embarrassment is far outweighed by my desire for closeness with God, by my attempts to be honest, to be a man of integrity, right? For so long, virtue in all its forms seemed so out of grasp, right? Like simple things, like how do people pay their bills on time? Like, how do you do that? How do you not say like, this is my money and I'm going to do what I want with my money, and then I will pay you when I decide that you're worth paying, right? Like, and then more things like, how do you get a relationship with just one woman, right? Like, how do you go to work on time and give an honest day's pay and then, right, like leave when the job is done, not when you decide it's time to leave. And all of a sudden, right, like situations which used to baffle us, all of a sudden become like not like, right, like 2 years sober, I moved into a new apartment that tripled my rent. When I was drinking, I had a hard time paying the rent of the previous apartment. And then I got sober and I'm like, I'm 2 years sober and I got an apartment that's triple the rent of what that was. And like, how am I going to do this? And the rent got paid every time. So much so that when I moved into this place, which almost doubled that rent, I got a glowing review from the landlord. Right. God makes things possible that are not. But the reason why I talk about 6 and 7 and the idea of working on my defects is because the closest thing that I'm going to get to any level of exercise that I can do in an effort to co-create a life with God that diminishes the power that these defects have in my life is step 10. Right? Bill, in his story, describes step 10 in one sentence. Right? I was to test my thinking against the new God consciousness within, which means that I am now holding my, not only like my actions, right? But like I can't act out a life that is dramatically different from the way that my mind operates without God's help. Because my mind is the one that is the chief bullshit manufacturer. It is the, right? Like it is the one that is going to spin the story that I'm going to go then act out. It is the narrative, right? Like that. And that's what I live in. And the biggest story, the most dangerous story, the most painful story that I'm ever told from before I get here and consistently what my mind wants to tell me throughout this entire journey is that I don't know God. That I'm somehow separate from God. And so if I'm going to test my thinking against the new God consciousness within, that's the standard. Right? Like, am I behaving like a man who knows God? Am I thinking like a man who knows God? Am I operating in the world as a man with the virtues that God has made available to me now? Right? Like when I got here, I lack 100% lack the ability to empathize. How life affected you did not even occur to me. Right? Like it did, your experience in life. Right? And so like me being able to think about like how my actions affected you, like that wasn't even there because I wasn't at all concerned with your experience. And then all of a sudden I'm washed over with this desire to make sure your life is okay. I'm washed over with this understanding of like we are all children of the same God just trying to have an experience. And so if I'm in that place, then all of a sudden I find myself thinking, I don't like this or I don't like that. And I think that, right, resentment for us, right, resentment for us is the manifestation of my disagreement with how reality presents itself. Because the narrative in my mind is a story about how I want life to go to suit my needs. And when the external world doesn't match the internal world, that causes a disruption, right? The book talks about hurt, threatened, or interfered with. And so I've got some tools that I can use when I do that. And I'm not perfect at this, right? Like I don't, like if you ever see Ralph at a conference, like Ralph floats in, right? Like I just walk on 2 feet, right? Like I'm not there yet, but that's the goal, right? And so during the pandemic, I was home in the house, and I've told this story before. I'm home in the house with in a 750, 800 square foot apartment, right? And with a pregnant girlfriend. I didn't have to be at work for 3 weeks. Pregnant girlfriend. I don't know. My son was 8 or 9, maybe 10, and he was 10. My son's 10. My stepdaughter's 6 or 7. She's pregnant, and we have a new puppy in the house in this tiny little apartment. And so when they said if you wanted to go get toilet paper or anything else, you had to be willing to stand online forever and sacrifice, risk sacrificing your life to this thing that's going on. I was willing to do that just to get out of the house, right? And so me and my son would mask up and go anywhere. And one of the favorite places that would happen was Target, right? And I've had so many spiritual experiences in Target. Like I could do a meeting on spiritual experiences at Target. And for you people across the pond, you might not have Target over there. It's just a big old like department store. Is all it is. Um, and so we walk into Target, and sometimes we go into Target in my neighborhood, which is I live in the Bronx, which is the inner city, and sometimes we would drive up to the Targets in the suburbs, the nice ones. And me and my son are leaving this Target, and we go to the self checkout and we pay for all this stuff. And then as I'm walking out, the guy stops and he pulls the receipt. The security guard pulls the receipt from my hand to check the stuff that's on the receipt is in the bag. And I snatched the receipt back out of his hand. I said, "You don't do that in the Targets in the suburbs. You're only doing that in the city." And I stormed out of there in my self-righteous anger. And my son looks up at me. He says, "Daddy, why'd you do that?" And I said, "I don't know, but I got to go back and say sorry." And so I turned around and I go back and I'm praying on the walk to him. And I get there and I offer the amends. And he looked overwhelmed by what I was saying to him. And he stopped. He stopped me and he's like, "Hey, man, like when everything shut down, I lost 2 out of my 3 jobs. I have a wife and a baby at home, and I'm the only one who brings in any money. And this is the last one I got. And I don't love that they tell me to do this, but I have to do what they tell me to do so that I can keep my job." And like for a moment, I realized yet again, my ideas of reality aren't reality, right? And my willingness to look at it almost instantaneously. So although I was like prodded by my little guy, which God has spoken to on more than one occasion, but like my willingness to do that when those moments happen will decrease the frequency over time that I will have to do that. Because I start to become painfully aware of how I'm thinking. Right. And a lot of times, like we're given a whole set of tools. Oh, by the way, that security guard still works at the Target. My baby daughter that was in the belly at the time is 5. He knows her by name. Right. And he hypes up when she walks in the door. "Hey, Summer Grace." So we're given a whole set of tools. Right. Like I should pray. I should talk to somebody about it. Right. I should make an amends if I'd harmed someone. And then I should go find somebody to be of service to. And I found that I don't always necessarily need to go through the entire gamut of tools, because a lot of times, like prayer is, you guys remember like the Staples used to have that commercial, the easy button? Staples, that's easy. Boom. And you hit the easy button, right? And like it prints all this stuff. And it's like, God, my prayer life, when I'm connected, becomes life's easy button. And there have been so many times that like, right. And like I've talked through this with my sponsor when I had one thought pattern, one defect, and this one was tough. And this one, so much so that I questioned whether or not I needed to go to a whole other fellowship for this. It was that persistent, and it was that, and I remember him telling, like, "You're just not in a place of surrender. You're just not fully willing to have God remove that thing." And so what it became was a moment by moment exercise of, "God, I don't want to think like this. God, I don't want to be like this. God, I don't want to feel this. God, I don't want this to be my experience. God, this is getting in the way of the man that I want to be. This is getting in the way of the man she needs me to be. This is getting in the way of the father I need." And like it was over and over, and it felt painful. Until one moment I look over, and in a situation that would completely have brought me to that place, I was just free. I was just free. And that's what it promises me, is that like if I'm willing to be in this exercise of throughout the day, really asking God, like, how well am I doing? Right, God, how well am I doing? I want to feel this. Right? Like the answer to how well am I doing is how well am I practicing step 10? And I'm offered freedom. I'm offered to be removed from the ring. I'm offered to be placed in a position of neutrality. And I say this all the time, that like I wanted cash and prizes. I thought I was going to get sober and get responsible and make all this money and do all these things and travel all these places, right? And like all this other stuff. And it's like, you know what the cash and prizes are? Neutrality is the cash and prize. Neutrality, when I feel it, when I sit and I get quiet enough and I can really feel what it feels to be in that place where I know God and I have the willingness and the ability to practice what God needs me to practice, neutrality is bliss. It is freedom, right? And I have been the jailer and the jailed for the duration of my life. And I can fall back into the place where I will 100% jail myself behind my negative thoughts and thought patterns. And as they show up on a daily basis, I can then ask God again. Right? Last night, I'll end with the story. Last night, a very, very dear friend of mine was going out to dinner with her stepkids, right? And she's in the middle of a big separation. And she calls me on the way there and she says, I'm feeling a lot of fear. Will you pray with me? And it's been a long time since somebody has called me and said, will you pray with me, right? I grew up in the church. I grew up with us laying hands and praying and all of these other things. And so like there was a part of me that was activated. And I stepped into a back room. I was at work. I was in the fire. So I stepped into a back room away from the hustle and bustle of the cooking and all those stuff. And we sat and we had this moment that we prayed. And afterwards, we talked about how the dinner went and all this other stuff. And she's like, I didn't know what to do other than to pray and then call you. And I said, no, you knew exactly what to do. Because you experienced this thing that drove you to a place. And this is what step 10 looks like in action. She's like, you're right. This shit works. Right? It works. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Matt. Merry Christmas. Amazing. It is now step 11. Sort through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. It now gives me great pleasure to welcome our second speaker, who is Donna J. And Donna will share on step 11 for 20 minutes. Donna, the Zoom is yours.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Donna, and I'm an alcoholic and an addict. And the thing that's so amazing is that even though Janie and Katie asked me to share on this meeting, I forgot the format. And Matt called and said, well, what's the format? And I'm like, I don't know, but he wanted to go first. And I'm like, okay, go first. And now we're here and I realize it's 10 and 11. Thank you so much, Matt. I can never think of another person. You are my guy that I always reach out to. And I just get to see you grow in your oneness with God. So thank you for allowing me to see that. Matt talked about, what I love today is that I can be in a meeting with another messenger and allow myself to be fed. It's no more, I got to follow him or how am I going to sound, but allowing my spirit to just open up and to receive whatever it is that he's being given to share. And that brings me to step 11 is deepening my oneness with God and to see that there is no separation. There never was any separation. I start every day in quiet. I want to feed my mind a new narrative, not the narrative of I've got to think about what I'm supposed to do, who I'm going to be. And I'm really willing to just surrender all of me to all of God. And it goes back for me to step 2, is God everything? And I heard another messenger say, is God everything or is God everything? God is never nothing to me anymore. And so the more I'm on this path, the more that second step proposition, I have to refer to, is God everything? And there's some challenges. I don't want to use the word problems anymore, because when I believe I have a problem, there's another word that usually wants to present itself, and that's the word fix. So I'm getting into the custom of looking at things as challenges, as circumstances. And there's not this history of me wanting to fix a circumstance or fix a challenge. And that enables me to be able to sit back. And I have to believe that when I sit now, it's no longer as comfortable as it was when I first came into this program. It was very uncomfortable being okay and not know. But can I sit in some faith and trust that I'm going to be okay? And a lot of our new friends have been talking to me about that uncomfortability of dealing with emotions. And when I speak to people that are new on this path, it gives me an opportunity to think back. So when insight enables me to look back in hindsight, and I remember those days where it felt like spiritual hangovers, emotional hangovers. It's like I had no experience of dealing with emotions. If I've said something to hurt someone, oh my God, it just made me feel so uncomfortable. And I'm able to see that I had no experience in living life. I used to run from every uncomfortable situation. I numbed over every uncomfortable situation. And God, who separates me from alcohol, and I shared this recently, it's like God has his arms out, and the thing that kept gnawing at me, telling me that I need to use because life is too uncomfortable, he's between me and that thing as I learn how to live, as I learn how to deal with some uncomfortable feelings, because it's all so new. And I'm able to share that with other people. It's like, but you never experienced feeling lonely. You never experienced disappointment. I remember when the sheriffs put a lock on my apartment, the only thing I can do, I was living in Queens, the only thing I can do was get in a cab and go uptown to Harlem to get high. Now, the situations that I was dealing with were not as intense, but it was all so new. It was the first time that I was working sober, the first time I was around my family sober. And so I get to see that all along, God is walking this path with me as I learn how to live. And Matt talked about neutrality as being such a gift. And for me, the biggest gift I got in recovery is to learn how to be. Just be. I don't have to try to be. Can I just sit and not know? And I used to be the great big such a much. I thought I needed to know before anything could happen. I had to know how long it was going to take. I had to know when it was going to happen. And all I did was keep myself in a state of unease. I'm so grateful for the teachers that are on this path. And it's interesting because I see Ralph on this path. And if the thing that's so interesting is that what becomes uncommon becomes common. Like, how can we all be on the same path, different intervals, but still be shoulder to shoulder? that's like, how do we do that? But it's important that I realize that I'm no more, no less, and I have to be with you, because how do I know that I can be of service to you if I'm showing up like I'm way down there? And how could you reach out to me if you think I'm way down there? No, we're both right here, right now. My step 11 this morning, so I'm going to see my family later, and that's a blessing. I've been weeping a lot. I was in the supermarket yesterday and I was crying just for no reason. I was watching Miracle on 34th Street because those were some of the movies that I watched growing up, and I was watching Miracle on 34th Street and I just started crying. And I realized that the pain and the misery that I had been holding on to all of my life about my childhood, it seems to be such a disconnect between the pain that got me here that I'm now able to look back on my life and there's space for fond memories. I remember Christmas mornings with my family. I remember I used to be very selfish and self-centered, and I still can be. But like Matt alluded to step 10, my relationship with God enables me to be as awakened as I am to these defects that will show up, that I can feel the tinge when they do. But I was looking back on my Christmas mornings, and I remember when I didn't get what I wanted, and I remember I got a bike, and it wasn't the bike that I wanted, so I literally threw the bike into the Christmas tree. And I couldn't see that, my father gambled, and he drank. And I now look back and say, wow, that was probably one of the Christmas mornings that he was able to save some of the money and get us gifts, and I was so unappreciative. But I'm so grateful that these mornings I could wake up and realize how generous God has been with me. Generosity of spirit. And as much as God has been generous with me, I can be generous with you. The forgiveness that I have received from God, I can forgive you. And I think for me, that's what this deal is for me to be able to be in position for God and see you through God's eyes and allow the love that I can get tapped into when I'm relying on God, let that come through me to you. I'm very amazed at how often when I am in prayer and meditation, what is revealed, and I had no idea what I was going to say in a prayer because it said, read a scripture or read something. And this what came up today. Thank you, God. Thank you for showing me what generosity looks like. I confess that at times it's easy for me to focus on things that don't matter. But today I surrender to your will, trusting in you completely. Change the way I think and give me a generous heart. Make me aware of the resources I have and how I can use them to serve others. Help me to live a life that blesses others just as you have richly blessed me. And to me, that sums up what this Christmas holiday is all about. Is where can I show up and give? Where can I show up and just be? The biggest gift I got was being able to be. I don't have to be who you think you want me to be, and you don't need to be anybody other than who you're being. And I find that if I can show up like that, I can be in peace. If I show up like that, I can not judge, but observe. Right? How do I turn my defects into assets? So instead of judging, I can observe, I can discern. And it's not anything that I did other than be willing to seek this relationship with God. I think it's so important that when we share in meetings, we share about what we were like so that you don't think that we just arrived the way we are right here, right now. No, there has been a transformation that happens in us and through us in spite of us. And the only thing what happened with me, I was curious, and I don't think that we put enough emphasis on how powerful curiosity is. I was curious to what people had. And curious opens up the door to willingness. Remember, when Bill saw Ebby, there were two things going on at the same time, curiosity and disappointment. He was disappointed because that's not what he wanted to hear in my Donna voice. Man, what are you talking about religion? I don't want to hear that. But the curiosity within enabled him to stay. It's the curiosity in us that lets us stay when we think this is a cult. That makes us think that we're too broken until we realize that we're not morally F-ups, we're sick. See, I'm so grateful in step 1 that I was able to see, because I had no power, no control, and no choice whether I was going to drink or not. My behavior matched that. It was such a relief to realize, Donna, wait a minute, you're not the worst human being. You had no choice but to lie, cheat, and steal, because this thing was on you. And it gave me enough willingness to believe that this program can work for me, so that I can do what I have to do, so that I can go back before the drink and to see what in my childhood I had been holding on, carrying around like a sack of rocks, when things that were supposed to happen just in a moment of time, I'm making it about my life. It's so beautiful to know that the pain and misery and despair that was needed for me to be here, it doesn't come to mind anymore. How does that happen? How does the pain of my childhood not crop up? How can I look at a movie and just start feeling these emotions that I don't know why I'm crying because I'm watching a movie? Because the pain is not on me. The memories of the hurt is not on me the way it was. How is it that we're still so human? But there's something that we see in each other that we don't even see in ourselves, because for me, I am so busy just being in the moment that I can't see what God is doing while I'm just trying to be in the moment. And I'm always in wonder, is that what people see in me? And that's why I always let people see what I see in them, because I think sometimes we don't know. I think sometimes God speaks through us. Maybe God needs me to tell you, you know what? Wow. I see how you're growing. We never know how God is going to use us on this path. We don't know how God is going to use us with our families today. I never expected that this journey was going to be about seeking God. All I knew was that there were some people that had been here before me, and they had this it. I didn't know what the it was, but I realized it was something I always wanted, and was I willing to do what they did. And I was willing to do what they did because I was curious. I knew that everything I had tried wasn't working. And I get to every morning to pause and be still. And sometimes I can feel my body humming. I sit with God, believing I'm one with God. And I allow that to wash over me, this oneness with God, so that throughout the day, there's this knowing. There's just a knowing now. And it's hard to even put my finger on it, but there's a knowing. I went through some hard times in the last couple of months, a lot of not knowing where I was going to go with my life, some material things, some financial things. And I just allowed God to show up, and it says remarkable things will follow. And I kid you not, remarkable things follow. People just came out of the woodwork, wanted me to work with them. Just all of these things that just showed up by me being okay and being right where I was, and realizing, you know what, I'm okay regardless of what my mind wants to tell me. I'm okay right here. And 2026 is going to start off way different than when 2025 ended. But was I willing to sit in the uncomfortability of not knowing? I say it's uncomfortable, but I'm sitting in it with trust and faith. So there's like a paradox. And I want to be able to rest my head at night. And I'm very, very diligent with my 10 steps. I need to tell on my thinking. And 10 to me is also 6 and 7, because my mind could care less if I see the behavior, but I need to bring it to God and ask God to show me how to turn judgment into discernment, into observing, not character assassinating. That's how sometimes I feel. Someone said, well, Donna, how do you feel this oneness? And to me, it's just taking a breath and leaning into the breath and just leaning in and knowing that I'm okay. I have all that I have. I remember the first time I said that I have all that I have. And I used to say I have all that I need. And that rocked me when I was able to say that. There was a situation where I was in a lot of fear, financial fear. And I remembered saying, I'm okay if I lose everything. And there was a peace that washed over me, because there was no place for my thinking to go, because I'm like, I'm okay if I lose everything. That place of neutrality that Matt talked about. Just being able to be and allow God to lead and me not needing to manage. And the beautiful thing is when we show up and we don't know where we're going. This is to me a testimony of my faith in God, is to be willing to believe that God is speaking through me, and me not worrying about what I look like, what I sound like, because that was real big for me all my life. I worried the world had power over me. I remember, this is funny. I don't have too many funny stories, but I remember I was standing waiting for a red light to change in New York City, and I had sandals on, and I always hated my feet. And I literally thought that everybody that was waiting for that light was looking at my feet. And I realized, damn, I really thought more of myself than I needed to. I'm so grateful the world doesn't have power over me. I'm grateful to know that I am connected to you all, that I can now look the world in the eye. That's why I love in-person meetings, but I can also achieve the same thing in a Zoom meeting, because I look at the camera on my laptop, because that represents that little light. That little light in that camera represents the light in you. So I want to thank you all for being here, demonstrating what spiritual principles are like, because I get to learn from you all. So thank you for allowing me to be here today. And I hope that I shared on step 11 the way you needed to hear it. Thank you.
God bless, Donna. Thank you so much. I will now let Matt back in for you guys to have a spiritual discussion for 10 minutes. Thank you.
Mute me. Okay, Matt. So here we are. So for us not knowing what we were going to do today, we are now ready to have a discussion on 10 and 11. What I will say this is, at the beginning of COVID, Matt, you showed up when I needed to stay connected to people that were on this path, because there was a lot of fear in a lot of meetings I was going to in New York City. And I realized that there was a lot of people that were relying on self, because all they talked about was the fear of COVID. And here it is, I stumbled across you, and people that were actually from the Bronx. And from that point, you've been a major, major influence in my life. So I just want to thank you. And how did you come to create that wonderful space for us?
Woo. Thank you, Donna. You have the ability to pierce my heart like very few do with your words. Thank you. Also because I know you and I know where they come from. And I love you dearly. Um, it was funny when I was expecting a fight. I'm going to answer your question, but I was expecting a fight this morning when I decided that I was going to speak on Christmas morning. And then I said, Donna asked me to speak. And she said, oh, okay. I said, but how did I come to create that space? So the original Bronx Big Book Study meeting in person, um, the idea came to life when I was 6 months sober. And I popped into, I started getting wind of these meetings where they were going through the big book line by line, Pathway to Power and Carry This Message and Sunday 103 and this stuff. And there was a desire to go deeper. And I popped into Carry This Message one day on the recommendation of a friend, and Roy T was there from India. And I'd been through the big book with George. We'd done the steps already, and George's home group was a big book meeting, and I'd had tons of notes and I sat and watched and listened to Roy do step 3 for 30 minutes. And he just did pages 60 to 63 in those 30 minutes. And I had more notes in that 4 pages of my book than the rest of the book combined. And I realized that there was something going on here that was, right, there was a subculture within AA of people who were really doing something. And I came back to my friend Danny and said, why aren't we doing this here? And he said, we are now. Mm-hmm. And so we started looking for a place to make it happen, and we found a place to make it happen. And I said, I had all these cool names I wanted to name it. I was like, I want to, all this stuff. And he was like, how about we just name it the Bronx Big Book Study so people know exactly what's going on here? I said, okay. So we had that. And so the church deemed us, right, and we would get somewhere between, it started out, when the first meeting starts out, it's 50 something, 60, almost 60 people showed up. And then when the pandemic happened, it was, by the time the pandemic happened, we kind of regularly were getting 25, 30 people. Then everything shut down, but the school/church where we had the meeting now deemed us essential. So we didn't have to shut down. And then the first week after everything shut down and we were there was 100 people in a room that was built for 25. And we didn't know what was going on. So me and George looked at each other and said, we probably should. This is irresponsible. And so we decided to shut it down. But the next night, there was still one meeting open. It was a women's big book study, women's big book candlelight study that was down the block from my house that I didn't even know existed, obviously, because I had never been there. And I walked in and when I shared, I said, thank you guys for inviting me into your coven. And they didn't like that joke very much. And so after I left, I was walking home, and on the way home, 2 blocks from my house, on the way home, I got a text from local AA people said every meeting in the city is shut down. And then the thought occurred to me, if I don't have somebody to read to, I'm going to unravel. And so I called Miles and I called George and a couple other people, and I said, hey, I used to sell work, I got caught up in what was it? A multi-level marketing pyramid scheme thing. And we did trainings on Zoom. So I had a Zoom account. So I said, I got the Zoom account. I'm going to send you guys the link, and we'll start at the beginning of the book and I'll read. And then let's do it at 9:00 after the kids go to sleep. And that first night it was 6 people. And I said, well, I don't have to be at work for 3 weeks. So let's do it again tomorrow. And then the next night it was 8 people. And then the next night it was 30 people. Right. And then, and what happened was we found that there were people who'd never heard this message before. There were people who were going to meetings and hadn't been in the big book like that. Miles makes the joke all the time. He says, until the Bronx Big Book Study, I thought the big book was fiction. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know the steps were in there. And then you showed up. And you were the first person to show up who had the same notes in her book that I had in my book. And the flip side of there were people who weren't doing this is that all of a sudden the people who were, God started bringing them together. And we started to have like this experience where it was like, oh, look, we've been hiding in the shadows, all of us. And all of a sudden, like we get to come out and we get to celebrate this experience together and, and share about it in a way that makes it accessible to people who weren't, who didn't have access to it. And so that was it. It was right. The joke I make all the time is like, that was my Mayflower Hotel moment. It was like, am I going to like go home and go to war with the pregnant lady and all of these other people? Or am I going to go into my room and open up my laptop and read the big book to some people? And my willingness to pop open the laptop and read the big book to people allowed me to never have to go to war with what I thought I had to go to war with, you know?
Yeah, and that period was so instrumental in my life because I needed to connect with people like you. Um, I had no idea how many people were doing the deal. Um, the same people that I walked this path with, I wasn't walking with them any longer, so I wasn't connected to too many people that were a fellowship within a fellowship, the way I see it. And just to hear the set aside prayer, a prayer that I had been saying from 2001, grow and now being shared in so many meetings. And it felt like those of us that were doing this deal over time, were in position when COVID happened. Like there were enough spirits in position to be available to carry the message for people who had never been in the big book before. So even though COVID was a detriment, in some ways it really helped us save a lot more people because we were now connected. And you get to meet people like Ralph, like what we were doing on the East Coast, we're now connected to people on the West Coast, right? It was just a beautiful thing. And then here we are. I remember when it was like the first year of COVID, you and I spoke at a conference, and that was the first time that I was ever asked to speak at a 12-step conference, and I was just so humbled. And 5 years later, is it 5 years later? Here we are.
Okay, so here's my question for you. So if you guys, I'm sure most of you haven't, some of you have ever met Donna, right? Since I've known Donna, her presence in a room, in a place, has always caused a peace to permeate over the space. Right. And the first time I met Donna in person was when I drove down to Brooklyn to hang out in her apartment to do that conference. Right. Like we did over 2 days. We did the entire 12 steps for this online conference. And she was probably at that point in my sobriety the most introspective and most willing to take the deep look at the uncomfortable stuff. And it was really inspiring. Now I've had the opportunity to, over the last 5 years, almost 6 years, watch that grow and watch that deepen. And every single time that I see you, that piece is stronger, right? You talked about it when you just shared on step 11. It's like maybe my job is to like download this love from God and then like project it out onto you. And so like, what do you attribute to that? Are you even aware of that?
See, that's the thing. I'm not even aware of it. I Can I finish? Yeah. I'm not aware of it, but I will tell you that there are times that I'm coming out of my kitchen into my dining room and I just say, God, I love you so much. I just love God so much. And I don't know what I'm doing except that I'm willing to just lean in. I'm willing to see when I've fallen short, that it's not to beat myself up, but for me to learn. I've had experiences lately where I was very judgmental. I wanted my point of view to be the point of view, and I did it to 3 people on 3 different occasions, and boy, did I feel uncomfortable. And I think that I look at my shortcomings as opportunities to enable God to show me what is it that I'm supposed to be learning out of this. I do know that I pick up the phone a lot. I make myself available to talk to people. I live alone. And I think that this period of my life is for me to be by myself with God. I have my 3 cats, but I feel at peace. But I'm so human, Matt. Like, I'm so human that I can't see the peace that you guys see. But I just know I spent a lot of time leaning in. A lot of time leaning in. That this starts happening.
Liquid prayers, I was told. Tears are liquid prayers.
Amazing. Thank you. Wow. Yeah, thank you. It is now the Q&A part of the meeting where you can come in and ask the speakers any questions relating to steps 10 and 11 or anything that they've spoken about. Please be mindful to keep it to questions only. There will be a 2-minute timer put up for the question asking, but you may take as much time as necessary to answer the question. So Kathy B has her hand up. Kathy, come in.
Good morning, everyone. I am Kathy. I am an alcoholic addict, multi-winner. I am on the West Coast of the United States right now, and it is very early here, and there's no place I would rather be. Donna, Matt, I've just met you the other night when you spoke on Tuesday, and Donna, you are such a central part of my life right now. And my question for you, so I traveled yesterday, I was in an airport, I was in the swirl of all of the things, and you touched on, this spiritual connection, that feeling of God, I love you. I would love to know for you, in the moments when you find that outside circumstance, because we're all human, right? That there's those moments where the world swirls up. Is there a set prayer that you use? Is there a set thing that you do for yourself to pull yourself back to that centered place? We're midway in the Bermuda Triangle of holiday season. And so I would love to hear that from you. And just, I love you so much.
So the word that I didn't identify was the word set. There's nothing set. It's a pause. And I ask for what I need in the moment. Peace. Enable me to just be early on. A prayer that I would say a lot was, God, still my mind. God, still my mind and increase my heart. They don't use the word persistent for nothing in the big book. This is about persistence. And I always use this joke, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? You practice, practice, practice. For those of you across the pond, whatever is your big opera house, like how do you get there? You got to practice. And so that's what I did. I just had to keep practicing, pausing. And even when I didn't pause, because of my experiences in step 5, I had become awakened to behaviors I was asleep to, and it was the uncomfortability of getting angry or putting my 2 cents where it didn't need it. It didn't feel the same. And so sometimes that's how I learned. So not all the time did I pause. But now I can feel the tinge, and I have to thank Loretta for giving me that word. I can feel the tinge of some belief, because it's like muscle memory. Like you'll say something and it will remind me of something that was said to me that pissed me off down the line, and all of a sudden I want to like react to it. But now that I'm awakened to it, I can pause. And usually the prayer is the pause. Like it's in the pause. Just stopping. Like they say that, spiritual literature says that we can get to a place where we can control the mind. And for me, controlling the mind is pausing, not letting it continue.
And now, thank you, Kathy, for your question. And Katie, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. There was no hands up, so I thought, you know what, let me put my hand up and come in with a question, either for Matt or for Donna. Thank you both, first of all, for your service on this special day and being here with us. It's really a pleasure to be alongside you doing service. So steps 10 and 11, they're spiritual growth steps, and I just wondered, what else do you do within your recovery to help you stay spiritually fit and grow more, please? Either or either, I don't mind.
Well, I'm going to say one thing, and Matt, you can take it, working with others.
Ooh. So, yeah, I think that the growth is in my, I guess most recently the thing that jumps out is my understanding of the necessity for this entire thing to prevent the unraveling of my life. Right. And it doesn't come from a place where it feels like necessity, but more feels like a privilege to have access to the tools available here. And it affords me an opportunity to then, like, my growth in spirituality or in my relationship with God doesn't feel like growth in the practice, in the reading, in the praying, in the meditating. That doesn't feel like growth. It feels like growth in real world situations, right? Like it feels like, like when I did martial arts for my whole life, and I never felt like a fighter until I was in a fight. You don't feel like a fighter in the gym, right? It just feels like practice for this thing. And then, right. And like, then when I go out and all of a sudden I'm presented with the situation that would normally disturb me or move me from center or put me in a place where I want to lean on my own selfish thinking, and I'm not. And sometimes I don't even recognize it until later, right? Like I just move through a situation with a level of peace and grace and compassion. And then I come out on the other side. And then when I review it in my mind, or I'm thinking about it at night when I'm doing step 11, and it's like, wow, man, you were really able to handle that in a way that you didn't have access to in the past, and, like on a practical level, like I do read a ton of books. My sponsor and I have read a few of the books from the authors that the first 100 were reading pre-Big Book. A lot of like the Christian authors and there's a lot of powerful stuff in that has really taken me to a place. And I'm going to tell a quick story, and then, right, like my girlfriend is pregnant with between us number 4, right, and this little guy is whooping her behind, right, like more so than any other pregnancy. Like he is just. And the other morning, like I'm just hanging out with my friends playing pickleball, and I get this barrage of texts from somebody who's obviously being driven by hormones, and I'm like. And so I responded, and like with complete patience. Like normally a text like the one that I received that morning is one that it's like that I want to wrap my hands, I want to put the gloves on, and let's go to fight. And I answered the text, and then I answered again with an apology. I wasn't even entirely sure what I was apologizing for, but it felt like the right thing to do. And then I explained a little bit more, and then I apologized and explained a little bit more, and then she came and picked me up. And in the car, like, we had this really peaceful conversation. We came home, we kind of continued the conversation in quiet. And then like 45 minutes later, she stopped and she looked at me and she's like, there was a time when you couldn't handle that.
That's right.
You know, there was a time when you would get loud or you would get angry or you would storm off, or, you know, your weapon of choice would have been the silent treatment or whatever it is. And then I sat in reflection after I left. After that, I left and I went to the gym, and I'm sitting there thinking like those were some of the things, or the tools that I used just to navigate life, right? And like all of a sudden, those tools were not available to me, but pauses were. Right, like pauses were. And even if I don't pause and immediately like offer the entire thing up to God, what I'm offered is, in the pause, is a moment to recognize, like, hey, God has made something available to me that wasn't before. He's not going to make me use it. Right, but my mind is still going to be programmed to do the thing that it did for so long. And then all of a sudden, this other option is available to me. And the growth comes in, uncomfortable or not, is grabbing the option that God has now presented to me. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Katie, for your question, and thank you for your answers. And Inbal, please, has got a question.
Yes. Hi, my name is Inbal. I'm an addict. Thank you, everyone, for your service. Thank you, Donna and Matt. It's a practical question, honestly. Step 10. When I think that I need to call immediately someone or to talk to it doesn't say call, but I do need to talk to someone immediately. And then my mind starts to like, now it's the time. No, maybe I don't need to. Or when it's not. A few days ago, I had a very big resentment just when I was doing my nightly review, and I was like, I can't fall asleep. Okay, I'm gonna call someone. Nobody answered, so I wanna ask. That is bothering me. To overcome my thoughts of like, I need to call, like I need to talk to someone about it. How did you, maybe in the past where you were less spiritual, I don't know, but how did you, practice it actually and talk to someone? I have a friend that she told me, okay, just leave a message. I don't need to answer you, or you don't need to call me. Just say it out loud to someone. So I would like just to hear your experiences. Thank you.
Go ahead, Donna.
So, and when I share, this is just my experience and my belief in this moment. It might shift later, but I don't think it's as important as talking to you about it than me sharing it, taking it out of the dark. So if it's late at night, okay, am I being considerate? That's the first thing. Am I being selfish because I think that I need to talk to somebody, but everybody's sleeping? I mean, I think that that's just going to add to my selfishness and self-centeredness. But I think more for me, it's just letting it out of the dark. I text a lot of my 10 steps. And my 10 steps, I don't use my fingers because then I get too caught up in the mechanics of it. And so I take my phone and I can hear myself. I don't care if it's you or me hearing it, but it's like, oh my God. Like, I can't believe how selfish I was. I can't believe how rude I was to this person that I thought was taking too long on the checkout line, because sometimes it's those little things that trip me up. And when I hear myself say it, and then I go right into 6 and 7 in the same phone text, God, please remove my selfishness and show me how to be in my space. Allow people who they are. Show me how to be more patient, more kind, more considerate. And then I go right into 7, God, please have all of me, good and bad. And then I keep it moving. So for me, it's not necessary that I call you involved. Maybe I just need to let you know, especially if it's late at night, I'm not going to inconvenience you because I think that I need to share my 10-step. I don't know, Matt, you want to jump in on that?
No, I agree with everything you said, but I also think that like oftentimes my willingness to share it is there's power in just that.
Right.
Right? Like like if I call a couple people and they don't answer, right? Like I have gone through the exercise of being willing to offload this because it's become just too heavy for me to carry on my own. Right? And it's like and remember that like, like what I was talking about is like we have multiple tools. Right. And so for a lot of my sponsees who are early on, who if I give them the instruction in step 10 to call you with what's disturbing them, you will be held hostage for 3 hours and 36 minutes. So I tell them, right, like if you go further down those instructions, it says find somebody to be of service to, right? Find somebody I can help. And so what I tell them is I say, when you are disturbed, call somebody and ask them how they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're all, right, like we are all given the opportunity, no matter how far down the spiritual line you are, we can find something to offload. Right. And so if all of a sudden, if I'm right, like I'm stressed about something ridiculous, right? Like, oh man, these guys messed up at work, right? All this other stuff. And then I call, hey man, how you doing? And then all of a sudden, right, like I get this onslaught of something that they needed to let go. And then by the time I'm done with that conversation, whatever was bothering me seems so minuscule compared to what somebody else was carrying. And now we're both free. Right. So like if I can't find somebody to help, and that doesn't even necessarily mean somebody in sobriety. Right. Like like anything that gets me out of me. Right. That's it. I have multiple avenues to get out of me. Right. God, I can pray about it. I can talk to somebody about it. I can go help somebody. Like I have all of these avenues and these tools available to me to get the job done. So.
Yeah, I think the deal is to be available, and I can't be available if I'm relying on the lies of my thinking mind. And to Matt's point, like, why were we pulled from the gates of hell? Like, what is our purpose? Is to be useful. So anything that I can do to be free, and it's just like making amends. Like, there's some people that are not available, but it's my willingness to want to reach out to them that's freeing as well.
Thank you for your answers and thank you for your question, Imbal. Martina, your hand is up. We'll give you 1 minute to ask your question.
Oh, thank you so much. Hi, my name is Martina, alcoholic and addict. Thank you so much for the meeting. Thank you so much for service. And thank you guys for your share. It was amazing. So how am I going to say this? I went through a list of many character defects the other day. Just like it was like a dictionary, basically, of character defects. And then, of course, the opposite of what I should do that I used for my 4th step. And as I looked through it, I could really see that, oh, wow, things that I hadn't thought about that have actually changed to the positive. Do you have experience, or can you share anything about defects of characters that you've had, that you've within the program realized that I'm not carrying this much of this defective character anymore, or in fact God has taken away this defective character, how that has changed throughout your years in recovery, if that makes sense? Thank you.
I remember my first 5th step. This was all so new, going through the work, and I had my first look at what my life was like, relying on self, and it wasn't pretty. But there's something powerful that happened. I became awakened to behaviors that I had been asleep to. And one that comes to mind, I was at work and my boss had asked me to do something. And my first thought was, he was asking me to do something and wasn't giving me enough time. And I was about to get reactive over it, but I paused. It's like all of a sudden, like the need to behave in the way I had been asleep to and just think, well, this is just who I am, because that's how I was. If you brought something to my attention, my comeback was, well, this is just who I am. And if you don't like it, go shove it. But I realized that that's not who I am. That wasn't God's intention for me. So a lot of my defects, there was a transformation in them. Some, over time, they'll still come up, but there's some that, I don't have the need to, be right all the time. I mean, and when they crop up, I can bring it into step 10. And that's one of those things. God, please show me how to be, and, where can I be of use, and shift from my mind wanting to run my life again to me being more God-centered and being of use and being available to others. But, there have been behaviors that just, I didn't need the need. Once I realized that I wasn't at odds with you, once I realized that I am you and you are me, a lot of the behavior wasn't necessary. But those behaviors was necessary when I was showing up feeling separated from the human race.
Yeah, I think for me, like I really didn't, and I think it was illuminated on my first fifth step, and then in subsequent fifth steps, less so, but still there was my propensity to write you not only a script for your own life, but a standard, to hold you to a standard that oftentimes I couldn't meet. Right. And I knew how you should be doing your job. I knew how you should be working your program. I knew how you should be showing up in your relationships, in your life, in your family, and your kind of parent you needed to be, all of those things. Right. Like that was 100% the way that I lived my life, is that I had a judgment and an understanding from my own point of view about how you were supposed to show up. And I had no idea that I was so judgmental. I had no idea that I was doing that. And then like in the work of inventory, and in the work of like inventory in real time, right? Like spot check inventory of like, that's not how that's supposed to be. All of a sudden, right? Like I remember in the Bronx Big Book study in person, there was a whole mix up of the format, and this guy wanted to read a different way. And then like everybody's moaning and groaning, and he stops in the middle of his sharing. He says, can't we all like agree on one thing, that we're all children of the same God, just trying to have an experience? Right. And like that moment has been burned into my mind. And that idea that we're all just doing the best we can do. Right. Like has freed me from that. And the unexpected outcome of God taking that away from me entirely is that like when I do resentment inventories, they are very, very few. Because I don't have any expectations of you. And not in a bad way, that like I just don't have, like I'm free from needing you to be anything for me to be okay. And so on the other side of that, like it's like I don't really, resentment's not something that I struggle with. It's just not, like like a deep resentment that I've had to put pen to paper to, I think twice in 2025. Like it's just not something that I've struggled with. And that's one that I was so blind to, and yet was so prevalent in my life and caused me so much, not only so much stress and anger and resentment in my life, but also caused me to harm and hurt so many people because of the way that I reacted when you fell short of this idea I had manufactured for you in my ridiculous brain.
Thank you. Amazing. God bless. Thank you for your question, and thank you for your answers. That brings us to the end of